It has been a couple of long, dark nights of the soul since our story last week, which focused around the Last Supper. Since then, Jesus not only has washed the feet of his disciples, he also watched one go out the door, knowing he was going to betray him to the authorities, Judas. Peter stood up to him in that same meal when Jesus is like, y'all are going to abandon me. And Peter's like, no, I would never. I'd be willing to die for you. And he's like, no, you won't. And that very night, after Jesus is arrested, betrayed by Judas, betrayed by a kiss, all of the disciples flee. They all run and hide, understandably, because they know their life is on the line. And Peter does indeed deny knowing Jesus 3 times. Then Jesus goes through a sham trial, ends up on the cross, a torturous death, all alone, except for the beloved disciple. I'm of the opinion that that person is Lazarus. That is debated, though. And several women. Mary Clopas, wife of Clopas. We don't know much about her. Jesus' mother, who's only ever called Jesus' mother in this gospel. And Mary, the sister of Lazarus. Where are the main disciples, the ones that we have heard about throughout this story? Well, they're gone. They're hiding. They're protecting themselves as much as they can. They're terrified. But I wonder how scared these women and the recently resurrected Lazarus were. And yet, they are there, standing at the foot of a Roman lynching. Jesus dies, and instead of hanging on the cross for the animals to get to him, as would normally be the practice, John tells us that a couple of religious leaders, a couple of people from the same group who conspired with Rome, conspired with the powers of the states to have Jesus killed, well, 2 of them were actually secretly disciples, secretly followers. One of them is Nicodemus, who we met around the same time that we met the Samaritan woman. You might remember that story. He was like, how can one be born anew? Well, turns out he kept following Jesus. What a lovely story. And then there's another person, Joseph of Arimathea. They take Jesus' body from the cross and they put it in a fresh tomb. So there's a hole in a cave that's recently been burrowed out just for the sake of stacking people in your family when they die. And they put his body in there. They prepare it for its forever resting place. Which is interesting because in the other Gospels, on Sunday, we need a reason for the women to be going to the tomb. And that reason is to prepare Jesus' body for burial, for long-term burial, right? But there's no need for that in the book of John. It's already happened. That's already taken place. And still, we've got Mary, this time alone, unlike the other Gospels, coming over to the tomb by herself. It's so early in the morning that it's still dark out. It's still a dark, grim, cold night. Why? Why would she go and risk being attacked, risk being arrested. Well, I think any of us who've ever lost somebody dear to us know why. She's there the same reason any of us would be there if it was our friends, our sibling, our parents. She's there to grieve, in my opinion. But when she gets to the tomb, she finds something startling. It's empty. The stone has been rolled back. Now, this is a time in which grave robberies were not uncommon. Also, Jesus, throughout this book, has been talking about how he's not going to stay dead. So, who knows what's jumping into Mary's mind for why the stone has been rolled back. All she knows for sure, all she's terrified by is the very notion that his body has been taken. And so she runs. She runs in the dark all the way to Peter and the beloved disciple, Lazarus, in my view. And she tells them what happens. And unlike in the other Gospels, we don't have any of these followers saying, who knows what she's talking about. They believe her. They run out to the tomb. Lazarus gets there first, but he stops just shy of going in. And who could blame him? If you rose from the dead a week earlier, would you be gnashing at the bit to go inside of a grave? No. I'm also struck that this was a foot race with Peter. So I'm wondering if being raised from the dead has maybe put a little extra pep in his step, you know? Next time you're, like, trying to get into the Olympics, you know. As long as you're being raised afterwards. That's the important, it's a two-step process. Peter gets there next, and he goes all the way in. And after that, then Lazarus goes in. I find that interesting, and that also seems so true of life to me, that often we go into these scary places with the companionship of another. Lazarus and Peter, they're both inside the tomb, and they see something strange. They see the material that would have wrapped Jesus' body folded up and neatly put aside. And we're told that when Lazarus saw this, he believed. These are materials that would have been very costly. That's kind of, if you're there to rob a grave, you don't want to leave without those cloths, you know? Any of you seamsters and seamstresses? Seam people. Any of you people who, like, go to Joann's Fabric and pick up cloth? Can you imagine how difficult it would be, how long it would take to make cloth in the ancient world? It's a process. It's an ordeal. And yet, these are neatly folded and put aside. Now, we're not told what they believed. Maybe they just believed Mary. Or maybe Lazarus, having been risen from the dead, believes that Jesus had done the same. We don't know. What we do know is they go home. They go back in the midst of the grim, cold night to the house where they've been hiding. Mary is also back at the tomb. And she starts weeping. Crying is not an adequate word. She is sobbing. She is beside herself. I wonder if this was the original work that she wanted to set about doing anyway. To do the work of grief. Or if she's just so overcome, she can't help it. It brings to mind when Jesus is weeping outside the tomb of Lazarus. And when Jesus does it, the crowd says, look how much he loved him. Look how much Mary loved him. Then, through the tears, she looks into the tomb. She bends down low, and she sees something strange. Two angels sitting on either side of where Jesus would be. But unlike in the other Gospels, these angels don't have anything to tell her. They don't say, hey, Jesus isn't here. He's gone up, and you should go tell the rest of the guys that he's resurrected, and actually you should go to Galilee to see him there. That doesn't happen. You know what the angels say? The angels just ask her, hey, why are you crying? Which is an interesting question to ask somebody at a tomb. And we don't know if they just appeared or if they've been there the whole time. We don't know if Lazarus and Peter just couldn't see them and Mary could. Our writer doesn't tell us any of this. All we get is the question, why do you cry? And she proceeds to tell them, hey, somebody took Jesus. They took my Jesus. And then there's a voice behind her. Says, woman, why are you crying? Who are you looking for? Mary turns around, and you can just picture the dawn is starting to creep in, because she can make out the figure of a person, but she can't quite make out who it is. She assumes it's the gardener, because this is a tomb in the midst of a garden. And instead of repeating herself, the same thing she told the angels, she says, did you take his body? If you took him, just let me know where he is, and I will take care of him. I will take care of him. This is Mary, of such great love that a week before she took a pound of oily perfume, would have cost a year's wage, gets down on her knees, washes his feet with it and her hair. See how she loved him. A Mary of such big love that when it's time for Jesus to show how he's glorified, he follows this example that Mary sets, or at least riffs off of this action of Mary, to likewise wash his disciples' feet before telling them, love one another as I have loved you. And here she says, I just want to take care of him. We know it's just his body at this point. See how she loved him. At this point, the supposed gardener says one word, Mary. There's something about that word, something about hearing her name articulated by Jesus, that she responds, Rabboni, which is a very formal way of saying rabbi. And she must have ran again and embraced him, because the next thing he says is, don't cling to me. Let go of me. Which just hits me right here. Any of us who have had to deal with loss, we've had to wrestle with that. How do we love this person that we also seek to cling to. And they're no longer able to be here with us. He says, stop clinging to me because I must ascend. In fact, I want you to go tell, our text translates it brothers, but it's a gender neutral, like it's a catch-all. Yes, it's a masculine term, but it's a catch-all for everybody. Go tell my siblings. He doesn't say my disciples. He doesn't say my subjects. He says my siblings. Go tell my siblings that I must ascend to my God and your God, my parents and your parents. And this brings to mind the Greek and Roman myths about demigods born and experiencing this world and then rising, ascending into the heavens, being recognized as children of the gods. And that's why we should care about them, worship them. And here Jesus is saying, yeah, I'm a child of God, but I'm not the only one. You're also my siblings in God. This ascension is a recognition, yes, of my childship, but also of yours. Stop clinging to me, Mary. I need you to go share this message with the others. And through this, Mary is commissioned as the first apostle in the book of John. Now, I've saved a detail for right now, something I've been holding back on. You might remember that when Todd was reading it, he said, this is Mary Magdalene. And tradition says Mary Magdalene is a different person from Mary, the sister of Lazarus. But it doesn't make much sense in the book of John because Mary Magdalene appears here, just out of nowhere. We've assumed, because traditions told us, that Magdalene must mean she is from a town called Magdala, but there's another problem. Archaeologists can't find a town called Magdala in the time that this book is set. You know what the word Magdala means? Tower. In this book, it is not Peter who sees that Jesus is the Messiah and calls him that. You're our anointed one. You're the king, the savior we've been waiting for. It's actually Mary who does that. While grieving the death of her brother, Lazarus, she recognizes Jesus as her Messiah. She makes the declaration of faith. And the rest of the time that we see Mary, we see how she lives out this faith. And she lives it out in love. Fierce, yet contrite love. And I think it's these things. I think it's Mary's profound acts of love that are actually what raise her up to be a tower worth following the example of. It's not simply this confession of faith. It's her casting status aside in a world where status is everything, to wash his feet. It's her bravely accompanying Jesus as he dies and as she watches a future that she hoped for slip out of grasp with his last breath. It's her loving him enough to go bravely venture out into that dark night and sob. I think that is why she is called Mary the Tower. And I think that is why she's the first apostle in this book. And I'm a little sad. I'm a little sad that it's taken until I've been 41 years old to even find this out about her. She's so much more than the Mary I was taught about. growing up. She's a Mary that I can look up to and seek to follow the example of, because she shines light and love through her actions. Love is the point. It's been the point all along. Love is the key to new life, and it is the path to resurrection now. It is the way we live. It is how we experience kinship, not just with another, but with Jesus and with God. Mary is the tower that we can look up to, shining the light, not just of faith, but of a loving faith. There's a lot of voices declaring our faith out into the world right now. I just wish there were voices of love. May we not cling to societal status. May we not cower in fear, hoping to save ourselves. May we live our love even when times are hard and it seems like we're losing everything. This is what it looks like to live as children of God and sibling of Christ. A new day has dawned. Happy Easter.